19. Back at my house, I phoned my dad's office. The phone rang, and no one answered. I checked the kitchen again for a message from mom or dad, but I couldn't find a thing. Glancing at the kitchen clock, I saw that I was already 20 minutes late for school. I needed a late excuse note, but there was no one to write it for me. I hurried back outside to get my bike. Better late than never, I thought. I wasn't exactly frightened. I was just puzzled. I'll call mom or dad at lunchtime and find out where everyone went this morning, I told myself. As I pedaled to school, I began to feel a little angry. They could have at least told me they were leaving early. There were no cars on the street and no kids on bikes. I guess that everyone was already at school or work or wherever people go in the morning. I got to school in record time. Leaving my bike in the bike rack, I adjusted my backpack on my shoulders and ran to the school. The halls were dark and empty. My footsteps echoed loudly on the hard floor. I dropped my coat into my locker. When I slammed the locker door, it sounded like an explosion in the empty hallway. The halls are kind of creepy when they're this empty, I thought. I jogged to my classroom, which was just a few doors down from my locker. My mom forgot to wake me, so I overslept. That was the excuse I planned to give Sharon as soon as I entered. I mean, it wasn't just an excuse, it was the truth. But I never got to tell Sharon my reason for being late. I pulled open the door to the classroom and stared in shock. Empty. The room was empty. No kids. No Sharon. The lights hadn't been turned on, and yesterday's work was still on the chalkboard. Weird, I thought. But I didn't know then how weird things were going to get. I froze for a moment, staring into the empty, dark room. Then decided that everyone must be at assembly in an auditorium. I turned quickly and made my way to the auditorium at the front of the school, jogging down the empty corridor. The door to the teacher's lounge was open. I peered in and was surprised to find it empty too. Maybe all the teachers are at the assembly, I thought. A few seconds later, I pulled open the double doors to the auditorium and peered into the darkness. The auditorium was silent and empty. I pushed the doors shut and began to run down the hall, stopping to look into every room. It didn't take me long to realize that I was the only person in the building. No kids. No teachers. I even checked the janitor's room downstairs. No janitors. Is it Sunday? Is it a holiday? I tried to figure out where everyone had gone, but I couldn't. Feeling the first stirrings of panic in my chest, I dropped a quarter in the payphone next to the principal's office and called home. I'll let it ring at least 10 times. Still no one home. Where is everyone? I shouted down the empty corridor. The only reply came from my echoing voice. Can anybody hear me? I shouted, cupping my hands around my mouth. Silence. I suddenly felt very frightened. I had to get out of the creepy school building. I grabbed my coat and started to run. I didn't even bother to close the locker door. Carrying my coat over my shoulder, I ran outside to the bike rack. My bike was the only bike parked there. I scolded myself for not noticing that when I arrived. I pulled on my coat, arranged my backpack, and started for home. Again, I saw no cars on the street. No people. This is so weird, I cried aloud. My legs suddenly felt heavy, as if something was weighing them down. I knew it was my panic. My heart was pounding. I kept searching desperately for someone, anyone on the street. Halfway home, I turned around and headed my bike to town. The small shopping district was just a few blocks north from school. I rode in the center of the street. There was no reason not to. No cars or trucks appeared in either direction. The bank came into view, followed by the grocery store. As I pedaled as hard as I could, I noticed all the other shops that lined both sides of Montrose Avenue. All dark and empty. Not a soul in town. Not a person in any store. No one. I braked the bike in front of Farber's Hardware and jumped off. The bike fell onto its side. I stepped to the sidewalk and listened. The only sound was the banging of a shutter being blown by the wind above the barber shop. Hello? I called at the top of my voice. Hello! I started running frantically from store to store, pressing my face against the windows, peering inside, searching desperately for another human being. Back and forth, I covered both sides of the street, my fear growing heavier inside me with each step, with each dark store. Hello? Hello? Can anybody hear me? But I knew it was a waste of my voice. Standing in the center of the street, staring at the dark stores and empty sidewalks, I knew that I was alone. Alone in the world. I suddenly realized my second wish had been granted. Judith had disappeared, and everyone else had disappeared with her. Everyone. My mom and dad, my brother Ron, everyone. Would I ever see them again? I slumped down the cement stoop in front of the barber shop and hugged myself, trying to stop my body from trembling. Now what? I wondered miserably. Now what?